Python is a popular programming language. Python can be used to create workflows and automation, handle big data, and perform complex mathematical operations. So why Python? Well, Python is widely used because it's very powerful, flexible, and easy to learn. Python is cross-platform, meaning it can work on Windows, Mac, Linux, and Raspberry Pi operating systems. Python has a simple syntax that closely resembles the English language. Python allows programmers to write programs using fewer lines of code compared to many other languages. Python supports multiple programming styles: procedural, object-oriented programming, and functional. One of Python's biggest advantages is its fast feedback loop. Python runs on an interpreter system, meaning code can be executed as soon as it's written. When you run a Python script, the interpreter reads the code, translates it into intermediate bytecode, like binary 0 and 1, and executes it immediately, line by line. If you make a change, you simply save the file and run it again within seconds. Because Python skips a separate compilation step, testing changes is extremely fast. This immediate feedback loop is crucial for rapid prototyping. In short, while both Python and languages like C++ must be executed, C++ is designed for high-performance production systems, where the time spent compiling is justified by faster execution speed. Python, on the other hand, is designed for programmer efficiency, trading execution speed for a much faster implementation and iteration cycle. When it comes to error detection, a Python interpreter will execute code until it encounters a line with what we call an error. This allows the programmer to run partially completed programs and test individual functions. In contrast, a C++ compiler, for example, will reject the entire program if there is a syntax error requiring it to be fixed before any testing can occur. One of the most important things that makes Python stand out from other languages is that it's a dynamically typed language. In languages like C++, variable types must be declared explicitly and memory must be managed manually, which requires more planning upfront. On the other hand, because Python is dynamically typed, meaning we do not need to declare variable types, this allows us to quickly sketch out logic without worrying about strict structural rules. More about dynamic typing later. In terms of syntax, or the language rules, Python was designed for readability and resembles the English language with influence from mathematics. Python uses new lines to complete commands, unlike many languages that use semicolons. Python relies on indentation, or white space, to define scope, like loops, functions, and classes. Other programming languages often use curly brackets for this purpose. To get started with Python locally, on many computers, especially Mac computers, they most likely have Python installed. We can check this by running the Python command in the terminal or command line. In my case, I have a Windows computer, so I will be looking for the command line by typing in cmd in the search bar in the taskbar. And hence we have command prompt. Now we open the command prompt, we are greeted with a terminal, and in here we can type command. Right now I'm at the C root directory. So because I've previously installed Python, I should be able to find that I have Python installed. So if I was to type python -- version, you will see that I have Python 3.13.1. If I did not have Python installed, then I can easily search for it on python.org and download and install it. On python.org, we can click on the Downloads menu, and from here we can select our operating system version. Since I have a Windows, I will click on Windows, and from here we see that the latest release is Python 3.14.2. We can select the latest stable release installer from here. Now, in my case, I would be selecting Windows Installer 64-bit. This will open the download prompt, and then I would save the download installer. And once it finishes downloading, then I would proceed with the installation. Now, in my case, since I already have Python installed previously, I don't need to go further. As mentioned, once the Python installation is complete, you can double check it by typing in your terminal or command prompt if on Windows, Python -- version. And if you get something like this, Python along with the version number, then that means Python was installed successfully for you. Now in my case, my version number is 3.13, which is a little bit older than the latest version, but that's fine. We still have most of the capabilities that Python offers. Since Python is an interpreted programming language, programmers write Python files with the extension .py in a text editor like Notepad. So since I have a Windows computer, I can search for Notepad. And Notepad is a built-in text editor to Windows. And this is what it looks like. So in Notepad, we can literally get started by writing our first Python file by simply clicking File, Save As, and in here I have a folder created on my Documents directory for saving Python files. I called it Python, and from here we can save as a type as all files, and then we can create a file, like for example we can call it new.py. Make sure that we specify the extension .py so that it can get saved as a Python file, and then we click Save. Now we can write any Python instructions in here. In programming, we call such instructions statements. Most Python programs contain many statements, and they are executed one by one in the same order they are written. So let's write our first Python file. In this case, we called it new.py. And as I mentioned, we can do this in any text editor. I'm using Notepad here, but there are more advanced editors like PyCharm, which gives more capabilities like syntax highlighting and things like that that makes the programming experience with Python much better. So inside this Notepad file here that we have created, we are going to write an output statement. Humans interact with computers using input and output. We'll cover input later, but for now we'll start with output. Text in Python must be placed inside quotes, either double quotes or single quotes. Text inside quotes is called a string. We use what we call the print function to display strings. By default, each print statement outputs on a new line. So let's start writing our first output statement or instruction as follows. Print, parentheses, and inside the parentheses, we're gonna specify double quotes, and we can write some phrase like hello world, exclamation mark. We can end it with a semicolon like in other languages such as C++ and Java, but as mentioned previously, semicolons are not required to end statements in Python. As mentioned, we can also write additional statements such as another print statement, print, and this time I'm gonna be using the single quotes because we can also use single quotes to represent text as well. And let's say, for example, have a good day. Now, let's say that in the text, we want to emphasize on certain words. Normally, the way we emphasize is by using double quotes. However, because we are already using double quotes to represent the text in the print function, we cannot use the double quotes once again if we are already using double quotes to surround the entire text. And the same applies if we are using single quotes. If we want to emphasize with single quotes, and we already have single quotes, we cannot do that unless we do something special. Now that something special is known as an escape character. But before that, let me show you what we can do without an escape character. So let's look at an example where we emphasize a word within the text without using escape characters for now. So I'm gonna write another print function. And inside the print function, we're gonna use double quotes. And we're gonna say, he is called Johnny. Now let's suppose that we want to emphasize Johnny in this case. Because we are already using double quotes to surround the entire text, we can emphasize Johnny by using single quotes, so the opposite of the double quotes. Now, what if we were using single quotes instead? So we'll have another print function, and this time we will be using the single quotes to surround the text, and we'll write the same statement. He is called Johnny. And if in this case, if we want to emphasize on Johnny, because we are already using single quotes, we must use the opposite of that. In this case, that would be double quotes. Now, if you want to use double quotes to surround the text and at the same time use double quotes to emphasize on certain words within the text, we can do that using the escape characters as mentioned previously. An escape character is basically just a backslash. So for example, if we have the following statement, print double quotes, we are the so-called Vikings from the north. If we want to emphasize Vikings in this case, using double quotes, because we are already using double quotes, we must use an escape character. So to do that, as I said, we can use a backslash followed by double quotes. And at the end of the word Vikings, we use another backslash to escape it and the double quotes that we're looking to emphasize it. We can also use the backslash for other purposes. Since each print statement in Python creates a new line by default, like we will see, we can include /n to print text on multiple lines within a single print call. For example, if we have the following print statement, learning Python is fun. I enjoy practicing it a lot. This will print on one line. We can simply just do /n right around here, and then I enjoy practicing it a lot will print on another new line. And you can include as many /n's as you want anywhere within the text. Now let's go ahead and try running the program. Now that we have written some programming instructions, in this case the Python statements. So the next step here would be to save the file, and we need to go back to our terminal that we have open, in this case the command line. And since I'm using a Windows machine, I need to get the path where the file is saved in File Explorer. Now I save the file under this path, and the file is right here, new.py. So then I'm going to take this path, copy it, go to the terminal or command line, and here I'm going to specify a command called cd, or in other words, change directory, and paste the path where the file is by right-clicking. Then I'm going to hit enter. Now you can see that the directory was changed to the Python directory where I have the file saved. Since we're in the correct directory now, we can invoke Python by typing Python. And then we can follow it up by the name of the file that we want to run. In this case, I want to run the new.py file that we saved. New.py. And we hit enter. Notice that we get the output that we have written for each of the statements. Hello world, have a good day, he is called Johnny, we are the so-called Vikings from the north, learning Python is fun, and I enjoy practicing it a lot. Congratulations, we have written and executed our first Python program. Now there's one thing to keep in mind here. What if we forgot to, for example, put double quotes or single quote around the text? For instance, let's say I did not put double quotes around hello world in the first print statement. And I save the file. Then I'm gonna rerun the file. Notice that we get an error. In this case, it says syntax error, invalid syntax. Perhaps you forgot a comma. In this case, we did not really forget a comma, so the error suggestion here is not accurate. We know that we actually forgot to put at least double quotes or single quotes to surround the text. So I'm gonna put the double quotes once again, save the file, rerun the program, and now the error is gone. So far, I have shown you how to write and run Python code locally. However, we can also run Python using an online editor such as OnlineGDB directly in the browser. This is useful for avoiding installation and for quick demonstration. For example, on OnlineGDB, we can select Python from the languages, and then we will get some template code provided by OnlineGDB, which we can delete and get rid of if we want. And then we can write a statement like print hello world. and click the Run button right here. Notice that when we clicked Run, the instruction that we wrote, print hello world, was interpreted by the interpreter, the online GDB interpreter, and we got the output, hello world, which is similar to the command line output that we've seen previously when we ran it locally. We call this the interactive console. Going forward, we will be using online GDB for follow-up exercises to demonstrate different aspects of Python. Now let's talk about the language rules, also known as syntax. Syntax is basically like the rules of the language, similar to how English has grammar rules. We'll start with comments. Python has commenting capability for encode documentation. Comments start with the pound symbol, and Python normally ignores the rest of the line when we start it with the pound symbol. So for example, pound, this is a comment. Following the comment, we can normally have an instruction or a statement like print, how are you doing? So now when we run the program, notice that we got the output, how are we doing? And the comment was ignored at line 1. We don't have to have the comment at the beginning or before the instruction. We can even have it next to the instruction itself. So we can say pound, this is also a comment. Run the program and notice that the Python interpreter ignores it. And we just get the same output again. How are you doing? We call this single line comments. We can also have multi-line comments in Python. To do that, we can use 3 single quotes and then end it with 3 single quotes. And inside these single quotes, we can write anything that we want, such as this is a multi-line comment. Notice that we can keep going line by line without having to use any individual pound symbols, because this area within the single quotes is a multi-line comment, so we can write anything inside this area. This is another comment. Hooray. If we run the program, we get the output, how are you doing? So the multi-line comment was also ignored by the Python interpreter. Instead of single quotes, we can also specify a multi-line comment using double quotes. We run the program and we get the same behavior. The multi-line comment was also ignored again. Now suppose that we have another print instruction, such as print, I will print on the same line. If we were to run this program, we will get how are you doing first, and I will print on the same line second, on different lines. This is because, as mentioned previously, every print statement creates a new line in Python. What if we don't want to create a new line with each print statement? What we can do is we can use what's called the end parameter right over here. So next to how are you doing text, I'm going to specify a comma and specify an argument, end, equals, and we can use double quotes. The behavior that we should be expecting is that now that we have specified the end argument in this print instruction, both of these texts or phrases or statements should print on the same line, not on separate lines anymore. So let's run the program, and that's exactly what we get. Now the print instructions have printed on the same line. Now, unlike the text here, where we were surrounding it with double quotes so far, what if we want to print numbers? Well, numbers can be printed without quotes. So we can say print 3, run the program, and notice that we get 3 printed out. We can also perform math operations inside the print function. In this case, we have a 3, so let's add another 3 to it. Run the program, and we'll get 6. We can also use multiplication, which is asterisk, 3 times 3. and we get 9. We can use minus, and we get 0. Or we can use division by specifying the double slash symbols, and we get 1. We can also combine text and numbers by separating them with commas. For example, print Johnny is, comma, 35, comma, start of the double quotes again, years old. Run the program, and we can see here that it says Johnny is 35 years old. Now notice that we have 2 double spaces here. So what we can do is we can just remove this double space here, run the program again, and we get Johnny is 35 years old, all spaced out nicely.